If you're an architect or an urban designer, you know that the future of our cities is probably the ultimate design challenge, right? But what if we could get past just the big ideas and actually start measuring what makes a city tick? Well, today, we're going to dive into how data science is handing us the tools to do exactly that.
You know, when you hear the term smart city, this is probably the image that pops into your head. Gleaming towers, self-driving cars just flowing perfectly, a city that runs like a well-oiled machine. It's a really powerful vision, for sure.
But as designers, we know the real work is always in the details. So what's really under the hood here? How do you actually build and manage this level of complexity? And maybe even more important, how do you make sure these data-driven cities are still places people love to live? You know, places with soul. That's the real challenge we're going to unpack.
To even begin to tackle that, we need a whole new way of thinking. It's about a big shift in perspective. Seeing the city not just as a collection of buildings and roads, but as a living, breathing digital ecosystem.
And there's actually a name for this field: urban informatics. And listen, this isn't just about throwing tech at a problem. The key thing here is that it's about where data meets the real, messy human experience of actually living in a city.
And this quote from Forth, Choi, and Satchel, it just nails it. It's a field that doesn't live in a silo. It connects the dots between three really fundamental domains. Let's break those down.
So you've got people, the communities, the social glue that gives a city its character. Then you've got place, the actual physical stuff from the curb to the skyline. And then there's technology, that digital layer of sensors and networks that connects the other two. Truly great urban design has to live right in the middle of this triangle.
And this is a really critical point. Every single city is different. It has its own infrastructure, its own rules, its own vibe. In the world of data science, this unique structure is called an ontology. You can basically think of it as the city's unique data blueprint. And what that means is there's no copy-paste solution. It's all about tailored design.
So if every city has this unique DNA, how in the world do we start to understand it? Well, we have to find ways to measure it, to take all that messy complexity of a city's form and turn it into clear, solid metrics we can actually work with.
And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? We can all feel the difference between a sprawling suburb and a dense city block. But how do you put a number on that feeling? How do you quantify things like shape and diversity in a way that lets you make real objective comparisons? So let's look at how this works in the real world. A really fascinating study on the Munich metro area gives us a great example. First, researchers just measured everything, dozens of different metrics about the urban landscape. Then, using some smart statistical analysis, they boiled all that noise down to just 3 core measurements. And then, they used those to model how the city might grow and change over time.
Okay, now don't get lost in the details on this slide. The point isn't any single number. The point is to just see the complexity. What you're looking at is a web of how dozens and dozens of metrics relate to each other. It's a lot. The whole goal of urban informatics isn't to get lost in this web, but to find the simple, powerful patterns hiding inside it. It's about finding the signal in the noise.
All right, so let's see how they put this to work. Once they had their 3 core indices locked in, measuring shape complexity, how clustered the landscape is, and its diversity, the researchers could start simulating Munich's future to explore some really critical design trade-offs.
They looked at 2 huge variables. First, the city's structure. Is it going to be monocentric, where everything revolves around one classic downtown, or is it polycentric, with growth spread out across a network of different centers?
And second, what form does that growth take? Do we go for compact growth, building up instead of out? Or do we keep going with urban sprawl, expanding outwards? These are the exact kind of big picture decisions that planners and architects have to grapple with every single day.
And this is where the data threw a real curveball, revealing some things you just wouldn't expect. We tend to think compact growth is always better, right? And it did create the most patch complexity, so more intricate shapes. But it was actually the sprawl scenarios that scored higher on how aggregated and diverse the landscape was. Now that's a finding that really challenges some old-school planning ideas. Okay, so what does all of this academic work actually mean for the people on the ground designing these spaces? Let's translate these findings into some clear, actionable principles. First up, the data shows that when housing demand gets intense, which is happening in almost every city, it tends to smooth out the landscape, creating simpler, more uniform patches of land.
But at the exact same time, that pressure can actually boost the diversity of the landscape by bringing new kinds of uses into an area.
Number 2, and this one is a really big deal. Choosing a polycentric or multi-center model for growth isn't just some abstract idea. The data shows it has a direct, measurable payoff. It leads to more connected, aggregated landscapes, and, this is the crucial part, it does a much better job of protecting precious green space right there in the urban core.
And third, that old idea that density is always the answer just got a lot more complicated. While compact growth is often seen as the sustainable hero, this study proves it comes with a trade-off. Sure, you get more complex patch shapes, but you can actually end up with a less diverse overall landscape than some types of sprawl. The takeaway? Context is everything.
You know, for the longest time, this kind of super detailed, data-driven analysis was stuck in academia. But now, with the explosion of artificial intelligence, these principles are finally making the leap from the research paper into the real world.
And this slide just captures that evolution perfectly. On the left, you've got that complicated academic matrix we saw earlier. That's the raw research. On the right is where it's all going, a real-world AI-powered system for managing traffic. The logic is exactly the same, finding patterns in data, but now it's running our cities in real time.
And the payoff here is huge. These AI systems can optimize how we use everything. They can plug right into the infrastructure we already have, and they can do it all while saving money. And maybe best of all, they give city managers simple, intuitive tools so they can make smarter decisions without needing a PhD in data science.
And all of this brings us to one last, really big question for everybody in our field. As these incredibly powerful tools for optimization become common, what is the core role of the urban designer? Are we artists, focusing on aesthetics and creating a sense of place? Or are we becoming optimizers, whose main job is to fine-tune the city's complex systems? You know, maybe the future of design demands that we have to be both.